car hit 100 miles an hour, headlights slicing through the dark. It was still behind them. Gliding, diving, wings stretched wide, red eyes burning. It wasn't stopping. November 15th, 1966, near Point Pleasant, West Virginia. 2 couples, 1 creature. The Mothman had arrived on the world stage. Welcome to episode 1 of this summer's limited podcast series, 100 Days of Mothman, brought to you by the Caffeinated Cryptid Podcast Network. All summer long, we're diving deep with eyewitnesses, paranormal researchers, scientists, and filmmakers to explore the mystery, madness, and the legacy of Mothman. And we're kicking things off strong with the Steve Ward, Point Pleasant resident, Mothman Museum staffer, and a walking encyclopedia of John Keel, Mothman, and all things high strangeness. In this episode, Steve delivers a fun, fast-paced Mothman 101, packed with history, theories, and how it all connects to the UFOs, cryptids, and the paranormal. I'm Bobby, host of the Caffeinated Cryptid Podcast Network, and this is episode 1 of 100 Days of Mothman. You can watch the full video episodes on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and several other of your favorite audio apps. Or catch the whole series anytime at Mothman100.com. And hey, be kind. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share. It helps me more than you know. Now, no more waiting. Here's Mothman 101 with Steve Ward on episode 1 of 100 Days of Mothman. See, how'd you gain that Mothman pedigree you've got, that resume?
Well, I don't know. I've been following. Here's my cat. His name is Keel.
Oh, that's
there you go.
That's that is amazing.
Timing. I've been following the Mothman since November of 1966. I was in a junior high in Michigan, and at the first major sighting where the 2 couples were chased, the Scarberries and the Mallets, down Route 62 out of the TNT area by the winged humanoid. It hit the wire services all over the world. So I read about it in Michigan, and that's before Mothman had a proper name. The locals just called it the bird. I had been reading John Keel, and here's some of his articles and so forth, some of his books, and couldn't wait for the Mothman prophecies. It came out about 7 or 8 years after the incidents. I think he tried to get it published around that time. Nobody was interested. Mm-hmm. So years later, his publisher or editor or whatever, or whoever said, it's time to write a book on the Mothman. So he said he got out his tattered briefcase and he had a bunch of notes and material. So he put together a book, and then they cut out half of it, about half of it. Its original title was going to be The Year of the Garuda. He saw kind of a resemblance between what people were reporting, this creature or apparition or whatever, and the Garuda of Hindu mythology. This whatever it was about 6-7 foot tall, roughly humanoid. Some people said it didn't seem like it had a head. Its head was kind of sunken down in its chest. That's where they saw the red glowing eyes, and a 10-foot wingspan. And it would chase cars and scare the hell out of people, but it never hurt anybody. Some people thought it was a harbinger, like a warning, but I don't know. I think harbingers need to step up their game. Don't if this was a foreshadowing that the Silver Bridge was going to collapse 13 months later, he did a bad job of warning people, just chasing cars and so forth. You need a harbinger to be specific and say, hey, this is going to happen. You need to avoid this, but it never seems to.
Yeah, there were like 0 clues in the book about Silver Bridge until like the last 20 pages.
Right.
And that was it.
It was really bizarre because people talk a lot about, of course, the Mothman, the UFOs, the Men in Black. There were even some animal mutilations, apparently. There were all kinds of people were experiencing poltergeist phenomena. But there was this other undercurrent going on, the prophecies part of the Mothman prophecies, where, as you just read it, Keel was talking to a lot of people that firmly believed they were in contact with some other intelligence, and he called them silent contactees because they believed what was happening to them, They would get predictions sometimes that would come true, and they had no interest in publicity or convincing people that what was happening to them was real. So it was just a bizarre set of circumstances. I encourage people to read other material by John Keel. The book that came out several years before the Mothman Prophecies that really turned my head was Operation Trojan Horse. That came out in 1970. Another book came out in 1970 was originally titled Strange Creatures from Time and Space. It had another great Frank Frazetta painting on the cover. Now, later on, that was in more recent years, it's been re-released in trade paper size as the Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings. But I almost encourage people to read that one first because it kind of eases you into the Keelian ideas. That's where he first proposes the idea of window areas, where he was trying to come to grips with why is it these things sort of seem to pop up, again, scare the hell out of people or dazzle people in the sky with UFOs, and then they're gone. The cryptids or whatever they were would leave footprints sometimes, and even close to areas, highly populated areas, and then they're gone. So he hypothesized a sort of a window at maybe a dimensional portal or vortex, or whatever you want to call it. And then, but Trojan Horse is like, it's, Strange Creatures from Time and Space is sort of like high school. And then Trojan Horse is more like an advanced degree in college. That's where he, and I resisted it at first because in the 60s, I was pretty much an ET guy, very influenced by Jim and Coral Lorenzen. They were the head of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, one of the early organizations that took UFOs seriously, and they wrote great books about encounters with humanoids, the landings, and people seeing actually what you would call close encounters of the third kind, one of Dr. Hynek's classifications. So I was pretty convinced that we were dealing with entities from other planets. And then I read Keel, and he pulled everything together, psychic phenomena, cryptids, UFOs, and so forth, and made a case that these things are tied together. So that was, and then after that, I read another great author is Jacques Vallée. He's still alive, still writing, and he one of his early books was Passport to Magonia, and that's where he pulls together elements of folklore, different traditions, and some modern day UFO experiences. For example, people that had encounters with the fairies, the little people, the elementals, would have missing time and be whisked away to some maybe an underground kingdom or a cavern or something like that. And the more modern day version, the people would have missing time, but they'd be aboard a spacecraft or what have you. Sometimes people said they've been taken underground to some kind of facility. There are many, many parallels there. So those two men, Keel and Vallée, really changed my thinking.
You mentioned the fairies. I had one of the biggest like aha moments, to lack of a better term, when someone mentioned that the Fae were the Fae connection and the Bigfoot connection was like hand in hand. And then Keel mentioned it a ton of times in his book, The Mothman Prophecies, and like the connections with the Searchers, the Men in Black, the Searchers with the like Indri Cole, like a lot of their in and out interactions were just like the Fae. And it makes you wonder if, like, he compared a lot of the things that happened to like the imagination of the time. Like if something was trending then, the aliens would appear as something that was trending then. And back then in the Middle Ages, the only thing they knew was a fairy was being like a little flying creature. And so that's where they appeared to him as.
Well, he talked a lot about what he called the reflective factor.
Yeah, that's what it was. I couldn't remember. So it's like a tulpa, basically.
Right. It kind of mirrors the consciousness, the human expectations at the time. Following Carl Jung, he wrote the book Flying Saucers, A Myth of Things Seen in the Sky. and his colleagues thought he was crazy. They couldn't believe that he gave some credibility to these things being perhaps temporarily real. That was what Keel was all about. He thought these things were temporal, and of course he used the term transmogrification, paraphysical, and and actually toward the end of the 60s, he had completely rejected the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Now, in later years, he kind of backtracked a little bit. There's a great interview. I think it's been republished in one of the anthologies. Can't think of the name of it right now, but he was interviewed by Richard Toronto. Now, Richard Toronto is known for his books on the Shaver mystery, a whole nother show. But he wrote War Over Lemuria. He wrote Shaverology, and he had a I guess you'd call it sort of a fanzine that was published off and on for many years called Shavertron. Well, they're actually, those are gathered together in 4 different volumes. And in there, he scored a interview with John Keel. And Keel, it was interesting because he said, he actually left the door open for the extraterrestrial idea for some of the experiences. And he did say he believed that there was more than one answer to these things. But one thing that was very interesting, he said that the term, he used the term ultra-terrestrial. And that was actually, he wanted to get away from extraterrestrial because he didn't know for sure that that's what they were, And so ultra-terrestrial is just kind of I guess you'd even call it a literary device to indicate that these things might be. He thought a lot of these things were a natural condition of the planet, and he did say that he borrowed that term from Ivan Sanderson. Ivan Sanderson, the great British naturalist, transplanted from England, living in New Jersey, a friend and colleague of John Keel. I actually saw them on a. I don't know if you kids out there remember UHF channels.
Oh yeah, I'm 40. I definitely remember them.
But my grandparents gave me their old black and white TV when I was a kid, and which had UHF channels on it. And there was a local station in the Detroit area, Channel 50, and they would pull in a lot of syndicated shows from New York City. And one of them was called Alan Burke. And one night he had Ivan Sanderson on talking about the Bermuda Triangle, and John Keel was in the audience, and he came up to the, even back then they had the microphone where the audience member could come up and ask questions or whatever. Well, he had come there with Sanderson, and he had some things to add. So it was pretty cool to see both Sanderson and Keel on the television.
Now, he was the biologist, wasn't he? The zoologist, Sanderson?
Yes. Yep. He had a TV show, I think, on NBC for a while. He wrote some great books. The Invisible Residents and Uninvited Visitors are 2 that I highly recommend.
Cool. Yeah. When I started digging into all this, looking in, I've done documentaries, and I've seen the movie, obviously. I watched it all through college. And I didn't really know, like, the layer 2 of it. I knew the surface level stuff that everybody knew. And I started let me see if I can get John Keel on the podcast. I'm like, okay, he's been dead a while. And I started looking around, Ivan Sanderson, no, he's dead. But yeah, it is amazing. And like you said, the localized visions. And he even tracked back to, Travis Parker down, or Calvin Parker down in Pascagoula, the next state away from me. I'm here in Alabama.
Okay.
But yeah, I was chatting with him kind of on the text before he passed away. But the way that the lighthouse or the bridge keeper didn't see a light when that happened, and the cameras didn't see a light when that happened, when the Pascagoula case happened, really speaks to. I know Keel really probably liked that happened so he could reemphasize what he saw, what he was hypothesizing.
But we're back in the mid 70s. Now their incident happened in October of 73. A couple of years later, we had kind of an informal UFO group. I had one earlier in high school where he actually had a name, but this one was there There were actually it was kind of loosely organized. There were a few people that were actually professionals involved. I was not. I was between jobs at the time, but they Lloyd, who was kind of our de facto leader, he was in contact with, was it Menendez, the co-author of Charles Hickson, who wrote his book on Pascagoula.
Mm-hmm.
And he got a hold of a cassette. Now, this has been available now where you can get it online.
Yeah.
You can actually hear Hickson and Parker talking to each other when the sheriff went out of the room. They didn't know they were being recorded. And but we actually had this cassette of it years before it was actually released. So you hear these guys talking, saying, "Did you see that?" You know, and I mean, these guys are freaking out, and you know they're not faking it. You know they had a real experience, and so that was pretty interesting that we had that scoop years before anybody else did.
Yeah, to me, that tape you're talking about is probably one of the best pieces of evidence as far as all things tying together that there is available. That's not just a video of something in the sky, you know.
Right. But whatever happened to them,
they saw it. It was real to them.
They had a real experience.
They Calvin came on this radio show I've been listening to for like 30 years. He came on there twice, and they actually did a full episode with him. And so yeah, it's back and forth. I feel like I know him as much as he's been on there. I really did like how Keel, you know, he put that out there. I didn't think about it being in the same time period, and then he started describing it. Holy crap! It's really tying together.
Yeah, there was a wave of landings, humanoid reports in the fall of 1973, and when I went to the MUFON Symposium in 1976. This was actually 10 years after the swamp gas fiasco. If you know your history, 1966, Dr. Hynek was dispatched from Blue Book when there were a wave of UFO sightings, and he suggested that on air, live on air, that possibly some of them might be due to swamp gas, which was probably ridiculous, but he had to straddle the fence. He was still tied to the Air Force. And so that was that was pretty. That made a big splash. Well, 10 years later, he was at this symposium, and the name of his talk was "Swamp Gas Plus 10 and Counting." And so he talked about those days, 10 years before, and some of the mistakes he made. He had separated from Blue Book some time before, and he had started the Center for UFO Studies in Evanston, Illinois. And so it was. I even have that. Recorded somewhere, but so that was really, really cool to see him. Now, at the same place was another guy named Dr. David Webb. He wrote a book that was published by the Center for UFO Studies called 1973 Year of the Humanoids, and he documents a whole series of humanoid encounters during that time period. And I got a chance to talk to him. He was a Keel fan, by the way. So, and a lot of when I was at the symposium, I was like one of these guys that had just gotten religion. I couldn't shut up about John Keel and the paraphysical, the paranormal aspects. And some of these people were looking at me like I was an insurance salesman, and it was 11 o'clock, and they wanted me to get out of the house. So,
yeah, Keel was he the first one that suggested that ultra dimensional aspect of it?
No, I think you go back, you can find there was a guy named Meade Lane from Borderland Science Research, and they used to publish a magazine called Round Robin. So there were others that approached the dimensional aspect, but he's the one that really pulled all these things together. People ask me, well, what was the Mothman? And I would say, well, if you Keel talked to a little over 100 people that year between December. He didn't get down there till December 66, and then December 67 was when the bridge collapsed. The description of whatever this was generally the same. 6-7 foot tall, again 10-foot wingspan, red glowing eyes. And well, some people just saw a big bird, and a big ugly bird. Tom Urey saw essentially a thunderbird, which may or may not be connected. And I talked to him. He's no longer with us, but at a Mothman festival several years ago, I talked to him. He believed originally that the others that saw the Mothman saw what he did, but due to the freak out factor, they added details. But then he was traveling to Katanning, Pennsylvania in 2002. That's where they filmed part of the Mothman prophecies. They substituted Katanning for Point Pleasant. And he was there going out there with Marcella Bennett. Now, Marcella Bennett saw this thing just a few days after the first sighting. She and her brother went out to a friend of theirs that lived in the TNT area. Now, the TNT area was where they made explosives during World War II. It's the McClintock Wildlife Area, but it's had the nickname of TNT forever, even though the most of the structures were taken down. There's still some remnants out there, but they went out there to tap on the window and maybe freak out their friends. The parents weren't there. The kids were there. She's walking back with her infant child to the car, and her brother's trying to get her attention because there's some kind of a strange light up in the sky, and she just does not interested. And then this thing, the Mothman, whatever it was, rises up off the ground, and she collapses. She actually dropped her infant child. Turned out the child was okay, but it took her a while to recover and pick up her child. They ran back to the house. They ran in the house, and whatever this thing was walking back and forth across the porch. So, a lot of people had close experiences, but the thing is that it didn't always flap its wings when it took off. It would take off straight up like a helicopter sometimes. A lot of people, and there was a Swedish researcher named Franzen that had corresponded with Keel, and he had helped Keel with some of the phantom airplanes that were seen in Sweden in the 30s with some of that information. Well, he came a year or two behind Keel, and they both talked to a lot of people that had seen this thing and then had an outbreak of poltergeist phenomena afterwards. How do you reconcile that? And then there's another one. If you look at Seth Breedlove's first Mothman documentary, The Mothman of Point Pleasant, the Reverend, come on, don't fail me, Gray, his wife wrote a book called The Thing, talking about their experience. Well, they saw this thing manifest in their bedroom. And this is right when the Mothman stuff started. So they didn't see the newspapers. And they were leaving the next day as missionaries to go to a far-off country, I forget where. But it was several years they came back. And then they saw the old newspapers and they thought, my God, that's what actually manifested in our bedroom. And you can see him talk about it on that documentary. So, you have all these, you if you try to put it in a physical category, like some kind of a unknown creature, just not discovered, that doesn't work. Purely an apparition. It seemed like it left footprints. It seemed like it had some kind of, Keel saw these odd-looking footprints around the TNT area, around the Old North Power Plant. So there are just so many contradictions. And was it paraphysical? I guess, but I'm not sure that even makes sense. So I honestly don't know what it was. It's almost like it was some kind of an elemental. But don't ask me what an elemental is, because I don't know if I can give you a proper definition.
Yeah, earth spirit, something that just appears. Could be in any shape. It's like a super cryptid.
Right. And it did seem to take other shapes. I mean, if it was the same thing. And then, of course, people have seen all kinds of winged creatures or winged apparitions. There was the Houston Batman, but it almost looked like that guy was wearing a suit. There was the Wisconsin Man Bat, I think, in the 90s. Linda Godfrey covered that. This big, ugly bat-like thing brushed against the window of the car a man and his son were in. When they got home, they were very, very ill. It didn't look like the Mothman. But a lot of people want to label these things as the Mothman or a manifestation of the Mothman. And perhaps, if Keel was onto something, perhaps these things are coming from the same source, but just manifesting differently. I don't know. It's just it's very, very hard to pin down.
You hear them talk. You hear them. People want to call it a Mothman or the Mothman. Like it's a Mothman. It's got the Chicago, like the Chicago one. They call him the Chicago Mothman.
Well, some of those sightings are a little dubious, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great researcher named Alison Jornlund. She
Mm-hmm.
went and she investigated a lot of those and found there were some problems with some of them. When somebody makes up a story, they don't get all the details right about the surroundings and so forth. She found some problems with there's several problems with that. I kind of personally I have ignored the Chicago Mothman stuff because well, some of it may be legitimate. A lot of it I think is not, and it's just kind of a minefield.
That's
But
cool. I actually had her on here.
oh, good, because she was on my podcast, The High Strangeness Factor, a few years ago, and actually I was able to get her. Jeff Wamsley runs the Mothman Festival,
Mm-hmm.
and I have his ear, and occasionally I've been able to recommend a speaker. I want people to know he's his own man. I can't. If you come to me, I can't guarantee you're gonna.
Mm-hmm.
I can get you in as a speaker, but I was able to get Allison in on the last speaker on Sunday one year, and she was excellent. So, and she was also, like I say, on my podcast. I see her occasionally when I go to the Van Meter Visitor Festival,
Mm-hmm.
and Van Meter is a little town west of Des Moines, and there was a wing, so almost like more like a pterodactyl kind of a creature, seen with bizarre properties, seen in 1903 for about a week in that area.
Seems to be a lot of the pterodactyl pterosaurs going around, and it speaks to the only one person can see the thing, because if there were like a breeding population of pterosaurs, a biologist and an ornithologist would have horned in on them by now.
I would think so, something
would.
that big, and even some of the claims of the Thunderbirds. But the Van Meter Visitor had a kind of a horn on its beak, and it seemed to have some kind of a light on its beak. It also gave off some kind of a vapor, fill in your own joke there, where people would have missing time. So you have this entity, which is not a leprechaun or a apparently a humanoid from a spaceship, but you still have the missing time problem. And you'll find Linda Sigmund had the same situation when she said her encounter. She and her boyfriend both had missing time.
Yeah, that missing time thing that's one of the things that brings it to the next level of being evil, or maybe you don't know what the intentions could be. Like why miss time? What's the purpose of it? And John Keel mentioned that it was to have the person deliver a certain package across the country, and so it would always be linked to a human when there was evidence sought.
Right. He thought that in some cases people were being manipulated to destroy or present evidence or whatever. And who knows? But I talked to a lady a few years ago that had a missing time experience. She and her husband, this is near Londonderry, New Hampshire. They were on the porch early one morning, still dark, and they're near an airport, and they're very familiar with the lights, the aircraft to go over. Well, there was this one set of lights coming toward them. They couldn't make heads or tails of it. Then all of a sudden, they're not standing next to each other anymore on the porch. They're kind of separated. She's looking. She's got her hands up in the air, and they look up and they see this giant black triangle just brushing the tops of the trees on their property, and then it passes off. And then, like a lot of people that have these experiences, at the moment it did not register. They just turned around and went back to bed. So later on, she realized that they were missing a little over a half hour, and then she remembered whatever that was, the black triangle. So she was on a kind of a quest to have a therapist recapture those memories, and it took her a while, but she had contacted me before she made that breakthrough, and because I have followed John Keel. John Keel had a kind of a catchphrase. It was, ask the contactee what they had for breakfast. And what he meant was, ask the experiencer what he or she all about them, find out all about their past life, because he found that people that had these experiences, so a cryptid or an abduction experience, had probably had other experiences that they weren't even aware of all their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, long story short, I found out that both her sons were experiencing orb phenomena, some in the house, some outside the house. They were having typical haunting phenomena, electrical problems. She saw a shadow person. And then I know that a lot of times people that have these experiences have also seen some kind of a cryptid or unknown animal. So I asked her, I said, look, this is going to sound crazy maybe, but have you ever seen anything like a Bigfoot or some kind of a animal you couldn't identify? And she said, well, no. And then she said, oh, wait a minute. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law saw something near the property, and this thing was seen more than once. And what it was, it looked like a black panther, but standing on two legs. So the point being that if I was still stuck in the 1960s with ET, I never would have known about, and if it wasn't for people like John Keel and also another great person we lost a few years ago, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She's the one that made connections between shadow people and people that were having abduction experiences. But anyway, if it wasn't for people like that, I would not have known to ask these questions, and all this information would have just been below the surface and maybe never come up.
It seems odd that particular tie-in between the paranormal and the extraterrestrial and the cryptids made like a surface in like the 70s and 60s. It just disappeared until about 10 years ago. Like no one ever talked about it until maybe 5 years ago. It hasn't been that long. But it's just now getting really investigated once more. That's all anybody talks about now.
Cryptids?
Yeah, the cryptids with the paranormal and the UFOs all being the same phenomenon.
Well, a lot of people just still resist the high strangeness aspects in cryptids, and I think that it may, Keel, when you go back to Strange Creatures from Time and Space, he talked about Type A and Type B cryptids. He thought that while some were definitely paraphysical and temporal, he thought that there were some that were probably just unknown animals, and he gave the example of some of the perhaps water monsters and even the Yeti. Now that was back in 1970. He may have changed his mind, but I have been following the works of F.W. Holliday, Chet Holliday, and he's written a series of books. Another great, no longer with us, but he wrote a series of books about Loch Ness, which convinced me that Nessie isn't just an unknown giant slug or plesiosaur. That there's something truly bizarre about the manifestations of that, whatever it is, and everything else, the UFOs and so forth that surround the loch.
Also, he thinks that Nessie has some kind of otherworldly or the paranormal-ish aspect to it.
Well, his first book was called The Great Orm, O-R-M, of Loch Ness, and orm is just an ancient word for worm. And when he actually saw it a couple times himself, he said he rejected the plesiosaur idea, but he thought it was sort of an oversized mollusk of some type. And his candidate was the let me get the Tully. Oh God, I can't even. Gregarium. It's some kind of an old kind of a sea slug. The problem is it's been extinct for, I think, millions of years and didn't get that big. But that was kind of the idea. He thought it was just some kind of an oversized slug. And then in his next book called The Dragon and the Disc, and it's got other names, it came over here originally as Creatures from the Inner Sphere. He recognized the elusiveness of this creature. The camera hoodoo. It would be kind of on the surface. You bring the camera up, and it would submerge, or the camera would jam. That's happened with Bigfoot reports as well. But and also he to kind of support that, he investigated some of the creatures, some of the same types of water monsters, for lack of a better word, in Ireland, and sometimes they called them horse eels over there, rather than the water horse. And some of these things were seen by credible people, families, dogs would react to it, but they would be in lakes that were maybe a quarter of a mile wide and 30 feet deep. So, I mean, there was even some controversy that a colony of Nessies would eat up all the fish in Loch Ness. Well, heck, in one of these small lakes, how would a beast survive? Where all the fish would be gone in no time. So there were many problems with Nessie as just a straight flesh and blood creature. Now, I mean, a champ may be something. Champ's in a much bigger body of water. It could be a whole different ball game. But there was an incident. Foyers is about halfway down the loch, and there was a Swedish researcher, Jan Sundberg, who was investigating Nessie, and he got twisted around. He was in a clearing near Foyers, and he sees this craft or whatever. At first, he thinks it's some kind of submersible because it's not far from the water. Then he sees these three guys in some kind of a suit, and he thinks at first they're diving suits. And he takes a closer look, and he thinks, no, there's something wrong about this. And they get in this thing, and they take off at a 45-degree angle. Holliday himself saw UFOs a couple times. And then there was the bizarre. They did an exorcism of Nessie. There was an Anglican priest named Dr. Donald Omond that wrote in his book that he thought Nessie was not a flesh and blood creature, and so that got Holliday's attention. So he contacted him. Now Omond had seen these things, these water beasts, a couple times. He saw one in a loch in Scotland. And a Norwegian sea captain said, I'll show you where they are. And he took him to a fjord called the Fjord of Trolls. And on the ship, a couple of these things, they see the humps coming toward them. And Omid is getting nervous. And the captain said, don't worry, they never hit us. And they diverted and submerged. Omid began to believe that they were evil. And I'm not quite sure why. This sea captain, Norwegian captain, believed they were, but they did and Holliday went along with this. He was kind of an agnostic, but they went to the four corners of the loch. Oman did his exorcism, and then they went out in a boat into the middle and did another ritual. And even the BBC covered this for a little bit. And so they came back. They borrowed a boat from the Careys. Mr. Carey had been an RAF pilot, and so and Holliday was exhausted. So I don't know what they triggered, but Mrs. Carey was very psychic, and she told Holliday wanted to go to that spot where Sundberg had seen the craft. She said you should not do that because she said you might be abducted. So I don't know about that, but anyway, so they're sitting there in the front room, and all of a sudden they hear this thundering roar, and they look outside, and there's this like a small tornado, a funnel spinning around, and Mrs. Carey sees a thin beam of light hit Holliday in the forehead, right where the holy water was placed during the ritual. But Mr. Carey, who's got their back to him, he's mixing a drink. He hears and sees nothing. So maybe we don't know how many drinks he had. Maybe that was maybe he was insulated from that, and then that was it. And then so I mean, what a bizarre experience. Presumably the ritual triggered something. I don't know. The next morning, Holliday's up early, and he's kind of gazing out the loch, and he looks over toward the road, and he sees a man in black standing there. And it's just standing there solid. It's almost like there's no detail on it. These I got the impression, these two-dimensional blackboards you see along the road, whether they're or
the cowboy.
Yeah, right. So he's does the double take. He walks over to it. He's going to kind of brush against it, pretend like he tripped or something like that to see if it's real. And he hears a pop, and it's gone. A year later, almost to the day, he has a heart attack near that same spot, and he realizes that as they're carrying him on the stretcher, that's where he saw this apparition. So I don't know what to make of all that, but it suggests that perhaps Nessie isn't just an unknown water creature. Maybe there's something else quite bizarre there. But anyway, Holliday's work is very interesting.
Mhm.
His third book, which Colin Wilson published after his death, after Holliday's death, called The Goblin Universe, and that's fascinating. That's where another one where Holliday tried to pull everything together. The introduction by Wilson is worth the price of the book. So these things are. I mean, as you know, when
Mhm.
once you move into this realm,
Oh yeah,
you never know where it's going to lead.
it is a rabbit hole upon rabbit hole.
Yes.
I had no idea there was that kind of aspect to the Nessie thing. Now you make
Well, a
me
lot
look.
of people would just ignore that and
Mhm.
disagree. But
Well,
I think there's something really really bizarre there.
you talk to enough people, it's hard to disagree with it.
No,
Even
sure.
though it's like anecdotal for the most part, like people say the same stuff. I've seen some of the stuff in John Keel's book that people have told me on this podcast about. Whoa, 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 whoa!
Yeah. Yeah, he was way ahead of his time.
I saw a shadow dude uh, at a window area down here in Alabama.
Oh,
Like a year ago. Well, maybe less than a year ago, and they're like, "You just got to embrace the woo, man." I'm like, "Okay." And I thought, when it's getting kind of dusky, dark outside, and
yeah.
your eyes kind of play tricks. I thought it was just like my eyes like forming, but it was like a thing, not like a straight up person, but like a blob.
I have been with people in the TNT area where they have claimed to have seen some kind of
Oh
a
man,
shadow person. Now, I didn't see him, but I don't really experience much of anything.
yeah, me neither. That's why whenever I say it, I'm just like, this is like the only thing I've got besides synchronicities and angel numbers. I'm real big on those because for some reason I'm open to them. I don't know why. But there was that TNT sighting where John Keel was inside the building himself with his
Right,
flashlight, and
right.
like the big metal clang and what's her name screamed, but he didn't hear a thing.
Right.
And I was like, what does that mean? Like this guy's like
Yeah.
he would have heard that. That would sound like the world ending.
That metal clang thing is something
Mhm.
that shows up a lot, and even like people hearing like a door slam on a car, and there's no car around there.
Mhm.
So just really really odd. The so-called zone of fear that he encountered, which was
Yeah,
pretty interesting. Now,
one at night. He was
yes,
walking in and out of it.
right.
Mhm.
He thought it was some kind of he didn't say microwave, some kind of um,
The
I don't,
infrasound or something.
yeah, something like that. But interesting because Colin Wilson addresses that in his book Mysteries. Another book I recommend. Now, Mysteries is a huge book. I've not read the whole thing, but each chapter is gigantic, and you can read each chapter by itself. There's a fascinating chapter about Lethbridge, T.C. Lethbridge, who was a dowser. It just I'll leave it there. It's just fascinating. But there's a chapter called something like Mysteries of Time and Space, where he compares Keel's research, Holiday, the Nessie guy, Lethbridge, and some others, and brings them all together. Well, he addresses that zone of fear, and he thinks that Keel was wrong, that it wasn't some kind of a artificial, not microwave or whatever. He thought it was. He called it a ghoul, and now that definition, as far as I know, comes from Lethbridge, the dowser. A ghost, obviously, is an apparition, but the ghoul is used as a term when you enter an area or a house. Sometimes you have that feeling, a negative feeling or a feeling of dread. That's a ghoul. So that's what he thought Keel experienced was some kind of a ghoul or negative energy, perhaps connected to the Mothman sighting. I don't know, but a couple friends of mine, they when Keel came to Point Pleasant, when they unveiled the Mothman statue right there in the heart of downtown Point Pleasant,
Mhm.
they took him to lunch, and he told them all kinds of great stories. And they asked him if he knew where that was, and he said no. And I can understand that because I was down there in 1977, and back then you could just drive around the TNT area. And I had no idea where I was going, but I had read the book and I was just fast. I went to the Old North Power Plant, which was still standing, but I drove around the area. But when I came back in 2006 for the first Mothman Festival, I have no idea where I was driving. So I can understand why Keel wouldn't be able to find that particular spot.
Yeah, especially if it's in like a management area like it is for the wildlife. Those have roads that intertwined and loop-de-loop and connect and back and forth. You don't know where you're at. You just go to the end of one and find the main one when you're done.
Yeah, there are a bunch of roads in the area, and there are if you go north on Route 62, make a right or go east on Potter's Creek, and you count down the igloo roads to your right. The seventh one is the one that they take the tours to. You can actually the Mothman Museum will give you directions on how to get there. You can park there, and you can actually walk into some of the old bunkers. There's 100 of these concrete igloos or bunkers where they stored the explosives during World War II. Most of them are not accessible, but there are a few that are accessible on that road that you can check out.
Can you walk to where the original Scarberry sighting was, or get to that?
Yeah, yes. There's if you the road before that is the Fairgrounds Road. You go east on there. You'll come up and you'll come to a point where on your right is the Farm Museum. On your left is the Fairgrounds. Well, there's a dirt road just before the Fairgrounds, and you can make a left on that, and you go up. Now there's nothing there. There's just an open space where the Old North Power Plant stood. But you can park on that road. Jeff Wamsley, a few years before she passed, he took her out there and he said, "Okay, Linda, now tell me everything that happened." And the first thing that happened was the two couples were in the car. They were coming south on that dirt road by the Old North Power Plant. And Linda saw somebody in the road, which she thought was somebody in the road. She said, "What's that man doing there in the middle of the road?" Well, that man's spread his wings by 10 feet. So there was something was up, and it shuffled off toward the Old North Power Plant. They noticed the red glowing eyes, and they got the hell out of there. And then they were chased into town.
Doing 100 miles an hour.
Yes. And I had a chance to talk to Roger Scarberry, who was driving the car. He had been quiet for about half a century. Steve and Mary Mallett, after they gave their initial interviews, kept quiet. They haven't talked to anybody. I talked to Linda Scarberry several times before she passed. Jeff Wamsley was her paper boy, and they lived on the same street. And she would, starting in about 2006, she would come down to the festival and talk to people about her sighting. Well, just in the last few months, Roger Scarberry contacted Jeff Wamsley, and they made the initial contact, and they were going to do the interview the next day. And Jeff just said, "Roger, just tell me, did it really happen?" And he said, "It scared the hell out of us." Now, I was in on part of that interview, not the whole thing. It's going to be in Jeff's third book, which I don't know when it's going to be out. He's got two books. So one is called Mothman, The Facts Behind the Legend, and the other one is called Mothman Behind the Red Eyes. So anyway, I heard part of Roger's interview, and his son was there, and his son reiterated. He said his dad just doesn't make up stuff, So there was a real experience there. So it was good. And I think there's another individual, I won't give the name, but somebody mentioned in the Mothman prophecies that is coming forward or may have already come forward to give Jeff an interview. So a few of the original experiencers are coming forward that have been quiet for about half a century.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a random thing to make up anyway, because who would have thought? It wasn't like now if you made it up, you'd have something to base it off of.
Right. I mean, there's no reality show. You're just thought of as a loon, and they were harassed. Linda Scarberry was harassed. Merle Partridge, that he lost his dog Bandit when he saw some strange lights. It was a couple days before the first Mothman sighting,
The dog
and
got abducted.
they were they would call him and harass him on the phone and make fun of him. So yeah, it was and I talked to a lady. Oh, maybe it was last year, a local, and she said, you just if you had an experience like that, you just kept your mouth shut back then because people just would not accept it.
Now here's a thought you just made me remember. Were they trying to associate the dog at the Scarberry mallet sighting to Bandit? Is that
I think some were, but it's like what, an hour and a half away. I don't
yeah.
think that makes sense to me. But
Yeah, I was just asking because they mentioned it like you mentioned it in your book, and it came from John Keel's book, but like they mentioned it really hard, like dog bandit, like it happened like a week before.
right.
I don't
So
know.
I doubt that. Yeah, I don't know what to make about Mothman.
It just seemed so specific. And we saw a dog. How did you know that you saw a dog? That's the only part of the giant Mothman doesn't get me. It's why did you note the dog in your story? Must have been a big dog.
Well, there was another dog that was killed across the river, kind of on the north end of Gallipolis, is George's Creek Road, and apparently Keel mentions that in one of his articles. But apparently there was a lot of UFOs on that road back in those days. But there was a crop circle, like a landing, and a dog was crushed by. It's gruesome, but by whatever this was that came down, that wasn't really heavily publicized. So I don't know what to make of that. But I'm thinking
like something landed on it.
Aliens need to be kinder to our animals.
Seems to be a trend, sucking them dry. Bloodmobile.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, that was bizarre. And then Keel said he actually called up, I don't know, some the company or whatever, and asked if they'd had other incidents like that, and he got hung up on.
I can just picture like Life South Blood with their giant bloodmobile, because now it's like a full on bus.
Yeah,
so try to get that.
That's a creepy story. There's a in some of there's like several anthologies that have been published with Keel's articles from different magazines over the last several decades and before his death. And in there he talks about some of those kinds of incidents.
Now, did you move to Point Pleasant because of this, or was it just haphazard for a job?
Well, I was I got a divorce and I had to live somewhere.
Yep, makes
sense.
And
I never seriously thought about moving to a place that was kind of my vacation spot. I was down there in '77. 29 years later, I went to my first Mothman festival, and it had been coming ever since. And since early on, I was a happy-go-lucky guy, going to the festival, getting the fever, buying everything with Mothman stamped on it,
Yep.
T-shirts, books, trinkets, whatever. But then I became slowly absorbed. I do the emceeing. I speak there. I go into the TNT area before the TNT hayride on Saturday night to set up some creepy crawlies with red and light up their eyes and so forth. My buddies fly the Mothman that's hanging up in the Mothman Museum. But so anyway, I become very much a part of the festival. So it was just the thought came to me. Well, maybe I could find I wasn't having any luck finding apartments where I was living, and they were just too expensive. I had so many books that I needed a 3-bedroom apartment at least, but I couldn't afford that. So anyway, I've got this. Jeff Wansley told me about this little house here for sale. I'm living right on the same road that the Scarberries and the Mallets were chased by the Mothman. So that's pretty cool. But and I have the 2 guys, 2 men in a truck that moved me down here. Boy, they worked their tails off. I mean, they were really good. But one of them said that I had more books in his hometown library. So there you go.
You're like that old man on the Twilight Zone.
Exactly. Yes.
All this time to read.
Yes.
Sit on your glasses. It isn't fair. Yeah,
Well,
that's cool though. I
I've got
wonder just
a
how
lot of
intrinsic.
guests.
I just wondered how dug in you were to the area. Sounds pretty dug in.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, I could literally walk to work if I wanted to. I work at the Mothman Museum on Saturdays, greeting people and answering questions. And the Mothman statue is right nearby. So if people want their whole family in the picture, I can do that. They don't have to send the kid out they don't like to take the picture. I can get everybody. And then of course, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I think we're going up there because I'm going to wrap this series up in September and kind of do like a on the side documentary in Point Pleasant. Haven't decided yet.
During the festival?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. What you want to do is you want to get to the only thing that costs a few bucks. Now, Saturday and Sunday we have speakers all day, and they sometimes they show documentaries or whatever down by the amphitheater. They set up something there, but what you want to do is stand in line, get your ticket Saturday morning. This goes for everybody for the TNT hayride on Saturday night. We take people to the Farm Museum, which is actually part of the general area of the TNT area. We have 3 tractors, 3 carts. 2 carts are like proper hay rides with bales of hay. They usually give me the old man cart with the nice, comfortable seats.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, I go in ahead of time, set up a few things like giant spiders with lit, glowing eyes or whatever, and cobble together a few creatures. And but the real the area itself is kind of like the star. You don't really need anything out there. And so we take people in. The men in black try to turn you away. There's 3 guys there with bullhorns. They're telling you it's a restricted area and all that stuff. Yeah, they're a riot. And
they have pointy fingers.
Yeah. And then they it's just a blast of the back and forth with people on the cart and of course the John and Tim Frick, they take the Mothman, they hide behind the old acid plant, and they run a wire, and they've got this ingenious low tech hand crank delivery system to fly the Mothman down, and then they crank him back for the next ride, and they light up his eyes with battery power, and they blast a sound effect. I can't say where they got it from because it's probably copyrighted. And I don't want them to be wearing ankle bracelets or go to prison. So anyway, there's this great howl that is accompanied, and then I shouldn't tell people this, but I'm going to. There's a few things you'll see, giant spiders and that kind of thing, kind of swinging in the breeze, and then toward the end, just when you think it's safe, there's a couple guys in ghillie suits that'll jump up and scare the hell out of you. Well, it is hard to find a place to stay. There are several chain hotels, motels across the river. The Low Hotel is shut down now. It's been sold. There was some fire violations, I think, where they shut it down. But anyway, the Low was extremely expensive. You'd have to remortgage your house to afford it, I think, for a festival. But some people drive a good half hour, even an hour, to find a place to stay. So there are wheels in motion to change that. But maybe in the next few years there'll be places that are a lot closer and more places for people to stay. But it is an absolute blast.
I know they recommend like Huntington and Charleston, an hour away, 30 miles away.
Yeah, that's not too far.
That's what I was looking at it. But I mean, there's so much to go down. Like, I shift gears a little bit. I was going to go back to the predictions. You know that you had the Pope, and a few years later he got attacked by a knife. But the one thing I was looking at, he was disappointed. John Keel. We're talking about, when I say he, I don't mean that's what I'm talking about. But that's more for the listeners. But he said, the explosion. It was all about the explosion. Even in Richard Gere movie, like he ruined his reputation because of the explosion. But then, like, you look back, and it wasn't even in the main book. It was in your book talking about the, what was it, the Union Barge Line explosion? and then the
Oh, I
Mason.
think that was probably Mark. Probably wrote that one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. You two split time on that one.
right,
And the jailhouse explodes in Mason County. Like
right.
I wonder, and that was in the Union Barge is in 53, the Mason jailhouse in 76. I wonder if one of those wasn't something they were there because they would be off by a few years. I mean, that was one of the points he made.
Right.
And he never went back. Well, obviously he finished the book, but he never went back and like, hey, maybe that's what it meant. It was on the Ohio River, both of them.
Right. Yeah. Who knows what was going on there?
That happens a lot with the synchronicities and angel number signs you get. Like you'll think you'll have a date, and then like 6 weeks will go by, and then it'll happen. It's almost like they're throwing darts at the wall, trying to make the synchronicities occur.
Mm.
Or the predictions, not the synchronicities.
Well, I talked to I mentioned I think in the book during the 50-year remembrance ceremony of the bridge collapse in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I met Bill Edmondson, who was driving across the bridge when it collapsed. And of course, people that have seen the movie, Richard Gere has all kinds of time to warn people off the bridge. When in fact it was people have said it was like 30 to 40 seconds that the whole bridge went down, starting from the Ohio side? I can't remember.
He said
now.
Ohio side to the West Virginia side.
Oh, okay. Like a series of dominoes, and he went into the water. He was forced through the passenger window, right arm first. His right arm became useless. The currents pulled him up, and he actually his pants were dragging behind him, because as people know, sometimes gentlemen will loosen their britches a little bit to be more comfortable driving. But when he hit the water, they were dragging behind him, and the reason they didn't come off is because of those 1960s pant cuffs. So that all sounds funny at first, but so when the current started picking him up, something caught his pants, debris from the bridge or something, and started to pull him back under. So he was able to kick himself loose. He came to the surface. He clung on to some of the material that he had been hauling that was floating on the surface. There was a slit in it. He could put his left arm through, and a tugboat captain fortunately saw him surface, and he aimed the tug to stop his flow downriver, and they pulled him up out of the water. And of course, they got him right to the hospital as quickly as possible. So, and he was 88 when I met him. He was there with his family up from North Carolina to pay his respects, and wondering why him? Why did he survive? And he was, which means he was 38 when he was crossing the bridge. And the last thing he told me was, he said 5 years later, he was in a horrible accident where he was okay, but he was trapped in the cab of the truck he was driving. And he swore that if he got out of it this time, he would never drive a truck again. And he never did.
I bet he didn't want to go. I bet he couldn't even look at a Peterbilt. Can you imagine? Was he the one that broke his spine? Who's the guy that broke his back?
No, I can't remember. That was somebody.
It was another truck driver, I believe, wasn't it?
Right.
He's the one that was the one that lost like 3 passengers that died.
Yeah,
his co-driver.
But to the town credit, they mobilized immediately. I mean, they sent boats out. They did whatever they could to rescue anybody out of those cold waters.
It was like inside of a minute, people were being rescued.
Right.
And I'm assuming, I don't know anything about the place. I'm assuming if it's like any other boat town, people are work on the water, and so it wouldn't be anything just to fire it up and go right there.
There are always barges going through, and a lot of boat traffic.
Yeah, anytime it's about like being like at the beach in the little harbors. There's always somebody on a boat.
So it was it was just an amazing tragedy, and ironically, it was the exactly 13 months to the day that the Scarberries and Mallets at that first sighting that the bridge collapsed. But just another aside, in what was it, 1904. The Elk River Bridge collapsed. Now the Elk River is up north of there, and is all part of that system. Well, they had a bridge collapse. There was loss of life, but not nearly as bad. But it's interesting that the collapse was on December 15th. Now that has to be a coincidence. But here you have these 2 bridge collapse tragedies.
The 1904 one was too.
What's that?
The 1904 one was too.
Yeah. 1904
Oh
was
gosh,
December 15th. Actually, John Frick uncovered that in going through the newspaper. He's one of
Jesus.
the guys that fly the Mothman during the festival.
Was there any? I guess was there any like reports of high strangeness during that time, or was it even
Well,
any people around?
afterwards, there's a book by James Jones Gay, I think,
Hmm.
called Haunted Valley, and in there he talks about sightings of some kind of a winged creature. But it's after several years after that, around World War I. He said that they had about a 12-foot wingspan. They say they saw them from a distance, but human-like heads, kind of a red plumage, and they were supposedly seen in it was around the Elk River, and they were seen, and it says that people would keep their children inside when these sightings took place. So, and that's about all we have on that. There's not much to report on that, but that was several years after
Hmm.
that ridge collapse. So you can't really say that there's a connection. I don't think.
Do you put any stock in the curse of cornstalk being something like that?
No, Denny Bellamy, who runs the tourist bureau, I guess it's called. He's worked with Jeff Wamsley and over the years in getting a lot of these documentaries taken care of, and he's been instrumental in promoting the Mothman and the good work that the Wamsleys have been doing. And they some years ago, not too long ago, they were tearing down an old schoolhouse, and there was a kind of a false wall. They opened it up, and there was a closet full of books and stuff that had been covered up. Well, in there they found a play, I think from maybe the 1920s. I'm not sure, but it dramatized Chief Cornstalk and the curse. I suspect there was no curse. It's a natural thing to assume that there was a curse, and if anybody had a right to hurl a curse, it was Chief Cornstalk. He was a peacemaker, and he was trying to bring both sides together, and he was betrayed and murdered. So if anybody had a right to hurl a curse, he did. But anyway, I really don't think he did, and it doesn't really would not explain the high strangeness aspects. I mean, look, we've got the Skinwalker Ranch, we've got Marley Woods, we've got the Bridgewater Triangle. On and on. We have these high strangeness areas. I don't believe they were all triggered by some kind of a curse.
Yeah, it has merit until you dive into it at all. The cornstalk thing does, like, oh, it totally explains it. Indian burial ground happens all the time. Then you got like what the searchers and the Men in Black, like what the,
Right.
and that's a very intricate curse.
Have you talked to Linda Sigmund yet?
I haven't. She's coming in, I think March 2nd, like a month from now.
Okay. Her sighting is pretty spectacular, and with missing time and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely ask her. She'll tell you, I'm sure. The early that December that the bridge collapsed, she had an encounter. She saw some of the classic Men in Black with the kind of unhealthy skin,
Mm-hmm.
and the sunglasses at night and the fedora and the dark suit. So and she didn't know what the heck to think of it. They said that people were saying, "Oh, that's just government," but she didn't click until a few years later. She read John Keel's book and then put it together. But anyway, that's an important part of her story is about the Men in Black.
That was the freakiest part of the book, as far as I was concerned.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, the rest of it was just interesting. He saw UFOs, and when at the end of it, the bridge and yada yada yada. But when the Men in Black came in, I was like, this is the scariest crap, and it's not even in the movie. Like, why would you leave that out?
Well, I'm sure they didn't do it because prior to that, there were two really silly movies about the Men in Black. So that I think that if they had done it, the way it was portrayed in the book, there would have been comparisons made. Now,
Yeah,
I had a
it was
chance
like
to
5 years before that.
right. I had a chance to talk to Richard Haddam, who wrote the screenplay. He was at one of Seth Breedlove's events in
Hmm.
Canton, Ohio, and a great guy, a fascinating guy. And he was told, to downplay the UFO aspect and to focus more on the Mothman. I mean, he had certain directions, things he had to do.
Hmm.
And one thing he did not know, there's a great book by Brent Raines called John Keel, The Man, the Myths, and the Ongoing Mysteries. And Brent Raines never met John Keel, but he spoke to him on the phone often, and they corresponded. And he was talking about John Keel's literary agent, and I can't think of her name right now, but she talked about when John Keel read Richard Haddam's screenplay. She said he was laughing. He was so happy. He said, they've updated it. They've got me married and so forth. But finally, we've got a screenplay that has captured some of the basic ideas of the book. I think that prior to that, he was getting screenplays where they were just turning Mothman into a monster.
Hmm.
And so Richard Haddam didn't know this, so I was able to tell him how thrilled Keel was with his screenplay. So that was very cool that I could pass on that information to Richard Haddam.
Yeah, I think that no, having read the book, I don't think there was be a different way to. I mean, sure, you could do it like a little like reports, like a documentary, but making it a story. It wasn't like a story that happened.
Right.
It wasn't like you got the police lady. She was Mary Hire. I mean, obviously, but she didn't go in the water. Mary Hire didn't.
Yeah.
She was at a pharmacy or wherever, or she
Right.
was at work.
Although Mary Hire and another woman, Mrs. Thomas,
Hmm.
they both had dreams of packages,
Yeah.
Christmas packages
Yeah.
floating on the water.
How they tied that together.
Yeah.
And then, like the opening scene of the book is the 2 o'clock in the morning with Gerald Smallwood. Get off my yard with that. The guy that I always think is like a bootleg Robert Duvall. I can't never think of his name.
Will Patton.
Yeah. Always like the guy that's Robert Duvall, but he's not. I can't ever think of it. He's from the Green Mile.
I'm sure people don't know if they haven't read the book that incident was loosely based on something that did happen to Keel.
Mm-hmm. It was
Keel was across the river in Gallipolis, and what he would do is he would just knock on doors at random to see if people had any experiences. Mm-hmm. Because he was the big shot UFO guy. People would come to him and make up stories. So he would try to talk to people that were not trying to put one on. And so he goes to this door and he knocks on the door, and the guy's got a shotgun and tells him to get the hell out of there. Mm-hmm. And he went, what the heck? So he comes back with Mary Hire. Everybody knows Mary Hire. And it turns out that a guy that he thought was his friend called him and said, there's a crazy man, that's going around, and, mm-hmm. You're going to have to get rid of him. And it turned out his friend didn't call. So, and then they find out Keel's asking him questions, and it turned out he had some kind of a low-level sighting of a strange light, and it burned out the electric box in his barn. So anyway, so that's what that incident was loosely based on something that actually happened.
They did a good job of taking what made a story happen.
Yes,
and I'm supposed that Smallwood was supposed to be Woodrow
Derenberger, loosely, yeah.
Kind of a mixture of a few characters, but
well, I had the same when I first saw it. I had the same reaction you did. I was disappointed that there wasn't more from the book and more about the Men in Black. And then once I thought through it, I thought, well, they couldn't really do that. It has become one of my favorite films of all time. Mm-hmm. I love the way that they put that together, and I'm a huge film score fanatic. Mm-hmm. And it was Tom and Andy did this incredibly atmospheric soundtrack for the film.
Is that that's the music video at the end of it, isn't it? The bonus
track? That's actually there's two discs in it. There's one that is is strictly instrumental, just mm-hmm. by Tom and Andy, and then there's the other disc which is Low and King Black Acid, and they did a whole bunch of songs
Hmm.
for the film, but only the Half Light is the one you're talking about. They
Yeah, yeah.
ran at the end credits, and then there's another part of another song where the couple is in the car, and the light that
Hmm.
shines overhead. There's part of another song. The rest of them they did not, as far as I know, they did not use in the film, but they're pretty good.
Yeah, with the welding eye burn.
Yes,
I can't think of it. What is that called?
the conjunctivitis.
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday. Jesus Christ, I've had it before when I welded in high school. Not a big fan. Yeah, I've had that movie. I've had it on VHS. I've had it on DVD once. I've got it on DVD now. I had to rebuy it. I don't know where it went. I guess it disappeared. Mothman got it, and
Well,
then
the original deluxe edition
yeah,
has a documentary in it as well. That came out at the same time as the film did.
I have to look for that one. I had bootleg it for a few years. I had it on like a bootleg DVD that I found. Have you ever seen Dragonfly with Kevin Costner?
What's it called again?
Dragonfly snake,
Uh,
like the
no.
if you like the Mothman prophecies, you would love Dragonfly. Scared the shit out of me. Like a better, because I was in college from 2002 to 2006, and for a couple of weeks I was in my apartment by myself. I had Dragonfly from. You remember when movie stores would sell their old DVDs for like $1,
Right.
Blockbuster, and my mom had got me that. Just she would just get one that looked interesting because I was in my apartment with no cable, and I watched that one afternoon. It was 1 p.m. in the summer in Alabama. It was bright outside. It's bright, and I was scared to death. And I've seen it several times before. I've still got it, and it's not a scary show, but that I'm real bad to get psyched out. And it had me turning on lights in my back room, opening doors. But you'll like it. It's in the same vein as Mothman. I don't know how true it is, but it's got that same kind of feel to it.
Okay. Worth
Highly
checking
recommend
out.
it. But yeah, I wanted to wrap up with a question. Like, the end of the book ended. The end of the book ended. Is that a phrase? The book ended with the Silver Bridge and like this whole wrap up. And you never know what's going to happen. What did he say? John Keel. In the book I've got, he even wrote like a afterwards from 2001.
Right. That would have been uh, probably. I think he probably referred to the movie. There's a 1991 edition also
Mm-hmm.
where he has a long afterward, which was interesting. But
He ends it. He ends it with Charles Fort's question: "If there's an universal mind, must it be sane?"
yes,
And that's how it ends. And I'm like, well, what happened to Point Pleasant? Like, there, 46 people died, 3 people got swept away, and did this keep happening? Did the Mothman stuff end like then? Did the beeps keep the calls and the Men in Black and the searchers? Like, what happened after that? Like in the 5 to 10 years after that?
well, people still have occasionally said they saw something like the Mothman, but things really calmed down apparently.
Yeah, I was wondering, like it ended like that was I was talking to Joe Turry this morning or this afternoon. I'm like, I might start this whole conversation off with what's going on now. Like what happened after that? Because I'm just forget about them.
Well, there still seems to be a phenomena occurring around the TNT area. People
Hmm.
will still see strange lights now and then, but
Hmm.
everybody except me. But
You don't got it.
so now, and of course, the what led up to that was the prophecies that Keel was getting from the silent contactees. And remember how they kind of coalesced. They said that, well, there was going to be some kind of an EM effect, whatever the
Hmm.
heck that meant. And then they said, oh, it's going to be on December 15th. Oh,
Electromagnetism.
it's going to be when President Johnson lights the Christmas tree. And it's going to be 3 days of darkness and all these horrible things are going to happen. And of course, Keel, by this time, he said he bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Hmm.
He's got his jugs of water up in his New York
Yeah, he had like a
apartment,
bug out bag in his car.
absolutely freaking out. And the Christmas tree is lit. Nothing happens. And then a few moments later, the blurb comes over about the bridge that collapsed between
Hmm.
West Virginia and Ohio. And he was furious. I mean, again, if this is a harbinger, it's like misdirection. And, it's the silent contactees. There was an incident in the mid 50s. Charles Lawhead was a professor at the University of Michigan. He was in contact with a lady who was supposed to be psychic, and she's getting information from the ETs, the Space Brothers, and they're getting predictions. And some of the predictions come true, like they did for the silent contactees. And then the big one, he's told, okay, it's going to be the end of the world, December 21st or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Gather everybody together on the hill. The faithful are going to be taken up by the saucers. And so he foolishly tells everybody about this. And guess what? The saucers don't show up. And that was about the end of his tenure as well, I believe. So, and there's another, I'm going to recommend another book. It's called Hungry Ghosts by Joe Fisher. Joe Fisher was in contact with supposedly several deceased people like World War II pilots and so forth, and even a woman from Greece that he's supposed to have been connected with through various incarnations. So he's contacting them through these mediums, and they're giving him all this information. And he's kind of falling in love with this woman that he's supposed to have been in contact with. And so he decides he's going to go on a pilgrimage to England and Greece and prove that the information he's been getting is legit. And so, long story short, he makes the journey. He finds out that some things are dead on accurate, and some of the stuff is absolute BS. There's huge gaps in the information that are just wrong. And so he comes back and he's trying to confront these supposed dead spirits with, hey, wait a minute, you told me that, and they're turning it back on him, that he must have made a mistake somehow, or that he's wrong. It reminded me of the silent contactees when some of the information became tainted, where it was just wrong. And so people should heed this. There's a lot of people out there that believe they're in contact with some kind of entity or intelligence. I would say tread carefully, because the trickster phenomena, whatever that is, may rear its ugly head, as it did for some of the silent contactees and some of the supposed spirits that Joe Fisher was in contact with.
Yeah, it's like a game they play. Of course, he calls it the game they play, doesn't he?
Right.
It just gives you just a little couple of breadcrumbs, and you make yourself look stupid. End up on a hill waiting for the end of the world.
Yeah, don't. If the Space Brothers are going to come down to the hill, don't tell anybody. Just let them pick you up.
It's almost like the penultimate of it is the fake one.
Yeah,
and that's the one they lead you up to it. Which makes me there's been several movies off this book too, hasn't there? There's been Men in Black. Was Close Encounters based off of it? Because of what's his name, Eddie Webb?
That was loosely Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was attached to Blue Book and then started the Center for UFO Studies later on. He wrote a book called The UFO Experience. Mm-hmm. And in there, he establishes the close encounter categories.
That's right, because Close Encounters is based on Hynek's. But yeah, Eddie Webb was the guy that got burned. That was the one that first one was off.
Well, actually, Hynek was reading in the trade paper or whatever about Spielberg going to do a movie called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but he didn't ask permission. So Hynek wrote him, a nice letter, and so Spielberg invited him to be part of the movie. He actually does have a cameo toward the end where all the scientists are there and the craft has come down.
That's such a good movie. Yeah, Hynek's the one with the pipe.
Yep. Yep.
I've got a friend that I've worked with here, and he hired me for a job about 10 years ago. His name is Richard Hoffman, and he's a MUFON guy. You may know him, but
I don't. Yeah.
I was wondering if you did or not. But yeah, I really appreciate it, Steve. This has been a nice deep dive, first little toe in to see how the Mothman thing would go. And this is kind of optimistic. Kind of wanted to get the rest of them in here tonight. Next.
Well, it's always fun, and come back anytime. It's I always try to besides doing Mothman 101, I always try to meander a little bit because these things have legs, and then there's so many connections or possible connections. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mothman's
just
like 1% of the whole damn thing.
it's endlessly fascinating.
I was like, I have no idea why this book's even called Mothman. He's not even in it.
Well, I can tell you why. It was called The Bird, but then the Batman TV show was popular at the time. So some faceless copy editor dubbed him Mothman. We don't know who it was,
Mm-hmm.
but the name stuck. In fact, it had nothing to do with a moth. So
Yeah, but all the depictions now, just like the one behind you, there's all got the thorax.
Yep. There he is, right there. Yep.
I'm even having a couple insect biologists come on as part of this series. Because one of the things I did with my whole Bigfoot thing, I'd have paleontologists and anthropologists on. So I'm trying to get an ornithologist. I'm trying to get I've already got the bug doctor coming on.
Right.
That'd be fun.
Just keep in mind that Mothman didn't behave. He busted the laws of physics, whatever it was.
Didn't flap. He just went up.
Right.
Which is like, why do you even have wings, man? Why don't you pull a Clark Kent? Just bust out. All right, man. I'll let you get back to it. Thanks for coming on, and I'll reach out to you if I need anything, and feel free to ask me anything too, because I'm fair game. I know some folks as well.
Well, my pleasure. Just let me know when the episode goes up.
I don't know.